The Baltimore Ravens have plenty of offseason questions to answer, and we talk about if guys will be able to come back, if the Ravens will add, and everything relating to the Ravens and their offseason coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host here, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, coming to you from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thanks so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens your first listen. Each and every day, we're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes a video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your shows. So be sure to subscribe, follow along. It helps out a ton. I really appreciate all the support, both audio and video. We're back. It is Purple Friday here on Locked On Ravens. This is our normal 6 a.m. episode, and we have Rocco DiSangro of FOX45, the Ryan Ripken Show, back with us today. We're going to be also doing a bonus episode that will come out around 12 p.m., 1 p.m., maybe 2 p.m. We'll have that coming out a bit later. But Rocco, this team right now, we know the disappointment that happened in the AFC Championship game, but we're just a couple weeks out now from free agency and the start of that. The Ravens have a bunch of questions to answer, and I'm interested to see how everything plays out for them.
No, I am too, Kevin. It's going to be a long offseason for the Ravens with that loss. It's still sitting in the minds of fans, of players, of coaches, I'm sure as well. And we're talking about it right here. So it'll be really interesting to see what the Ravens end up doing in the offseason with the draft, free agent signings, all that good stuff that's coming up in the coming weeks.
And I think if you want to start with questions, there have been a few that have been pretty prevalent this week in terms of storylines. One of them being the franchise tag. That window opened up on Tuesday. I believe it expires March 5th. That's the last day you can do that, or early March. Now, the Ravens have a couple of candidates they could use that tag on. I think the one that everybody's talking about, though, is Justinmata with his 13 sacks. And look, he picked one heck of a time to do it, a contract year. That's what, and a lot of Ravens players honestly broke out in their contract years, whether it was on their rookie contracts or maybe even some veterans who signed a one-year deal and they got the job done. Madubuike is going to be one of the most coveted free agents out there if he hits the open market. Now, there's obviously no guarantee the Ravens actually let him get there with the franchise tag. His franchise tag number would be right around $20.9 million, and that means that they would have until July, much like we went through this whole saga with Lamar Jackson last year. So, I think we're familiar a bit here in Baltimore with that franchise tag. I just don't think, Rocco, they can let him walk out of the building. I know that franchise tag is not the popular thing for players because it's not long-term security and not a lot of guys like to play on it. But just to have the option to extend Madubuike and not let him hit the open market, or maybe another team lures him away, I think if you're Baltimore, if you can't get an extension done, the franchise tag is what has to happen.
No, absolutely, man. And social media is wild. So you see the fits for certain free agents coming up and whatnot. And I saw one, I think ESPN put it out, and it was gross because it had Justinmata as a Bengal. Like that would absolutely, losing him would be one thing. It would be terrible. And the Ravens flock would just absolutely hate it. But to see him go to a division rival would just be sickening. I mean, that would leave such a bad taste in your mouth. Justinmata, I think he's going to be here for the foreseeable future. And I think, if the Ravens can't get a deal with him done, a long-term extension, you're going to see that franchise tag used on him because he played himself into big money this season. There were questions about, okay, what is Justinmata going to be this year? He showed flashes, but he was really sitting behind Calais Campbell, and that's a tough guy to be sitting behind because he's big on the field, his presence vocally, and then his play kind of speaks for itself. It really does. I mean, to be able to do what he did, Calais Campbell, he earned himself the title of mayor of Saxonville and Jacksonville. Then he came here. He had a pretty stellar career in Baltimore as well. So Madubuike, I think you're going to see him stay here as a Raven. And I think that franchise tag is going to be used if they can't get a long-term deal done. But we still have time right now. So let's wait and see what happens. Let it marinate a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Madubuike, he almost has to be in Baltimore next season. I think that the fan base would just go crazy. The team would lose such a huge piece. And at this point, Rocco, I feel like interior pressure is so hard to find, and consistent interior pressure is even harder to find. And the Ravens got that in Madubuike. Now, the other candidate would be Patrick Queen, although I think people are preparing for his exit in Baltimore as opposed to trying to figure out ways to keep him. Now, look, it'd be awesome if he was to maybe take a team-friendly deal and stick around in Baltimore, but I think the reality of the situation is, look, these guys want to get paid. I don't blame them for wanting to get paid, right? This is for Madubuike, Queen, Geno Stone, their first opportunity at a real NFL payday. They're not giving out any hometown discounts here. And I think, as we heard Geno Stone say on NFL Network, business is business, right? They love Baltimore, but business is business. So to me, I think the big question is, well, what happens with Patrick Queen? What do you do there? I think the pretty easy answer is you probably won't be back in Baltimore, and they prepared for this because they did draft Trenton Simpson in the 3rd round last year.
That they did, and a guy that would absolutely hate to see Patrick Queen go. That's his locker mate, the guy he plays side by side with. That's Roquan Smith, and he posted a picture on his Instagram. If we're doing this on, this is dropping on a Friday 2 nights ago, and I think you posted it, which, I mean, it was basically like, we run through people, ask questions later, something along those lines. Am I right? Yeah. So like those two guys, they're a great 1-2 punch, but the Ravens did prepare for this. When they declined Queen's 5th-year option, the writing was kind of on the wall. Okay, we're probably going to move on from Patrick Queen, and that's why they drafted Trenton Simpson. And it was a surprise on draft day when they did draft Trenton Simpson. So it is what it is with Patrick Queen. He's a great player. He's going to get paid by somebody. I don't see Patrick Queen taking a hometown discount. I really, truly don't. He's a great fit here, but he can go and play and dominate somewhere else as well. And I think that's what Patrick Queen is destined to do. He plays like a Raven. He embodies everything it is to be a Raven. So it really is going to suck to see him go for this fan base. But if you have a chance to get paid, the goal in any career is to maximize what you can do, maximize your profit basically, and get paid the max amount of money you can. Some people may say, oh, well, Patrick Queen, it's unfinished business. Like, we would love to have him back here. Why wouldn't he take a hometown discount? It's like, ask yourself that in your field of work. If you have a chance to go get paid millions of dollars more, not a million, millions of dollars more, you're probably going to take that job and go elsewhere. I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's 100% a valid point there. And we can talk about that with Geno Stone and a couple other guys in the free agent pool for Baltimore as well. But it's also one heck of a time for the Ravens to have this free agent class, Rocco, because it really felt like everything was coming together for them. And they've already lost a bunch of coaches. They're slated to lose a lot of free agents as well. Now, they're not going to lose everybody. Again, they're going to be able to bring some of these guys back. But every team is different. And what the Ravens have to work with right now, cap-wise, is right around $3 to $7 million in cap space. Now, obviously, there are going to be restructures. There are going to be, maybe there's an extension that's able to free up some space here. There are avenues for Baltimore to clear up some space. But I think when you're talking about what could happen and how they could get that money, the cut candidates are where I look to first. And I think Tyus Bowers is a pretty obvious one. I think his year was shrouded in mystery. Not a lot of people know what happened with his injury and how that was handled, whether by him or the Ravens. What we just don't know. And then other guys, I look to Morgan Moses. I look to Patrick Ricard. But obviously the big name is Ronnie Stanley, because the Ravens, if they release him post June 1, would save $15 million. But he still, although he did struggle last season, I'm not saying he didn't, you still have to find a replacement if you do let him go. And is that replacement going to be better than Ronnie Stanley? So who do you see as maybe potential cap casualties for the team as they get to free agency and still have to free up some money?
I definitely see Bowser as one. I mean, it's didn't play a single game this season, and it's tough. It's unfortunate because Tyus Bowser is so likable. And this has nothing to do with his character and what he does off the field, because it is really cool seeing him throw to kids, to fans, and he's still staying active even when he's not playing with the Ravens. But the fact of the matter is he didn't play a single game this season, and that's a guy that you would rely on and you hoped was healthy because of what he could provide in the pass rush. And he kind of, able the ability to do his thing out there. But injuries have been brutal for him. I don't see the Ravens moving on from Ronnie Stanley necessarily. I could see them restructuring his contract and keeping him here in Baltimore, but I just don't see it happening. Bowser is one I definitely see. And I mean, we're going to see some other guys as well down the line, but right now that remains to be seen who it will be. We're just really talking about hypotheticals right now, Kevin. What if this happens? What if that happens? So we'll learn more as time goes on.
I know we got to pass the time until free agency starts, and so all we can do is speculate on these free agent potential moves, who stays, who goes. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be talking a little bit about who could stay and who could go from this very talented and very deep Ravens free agent class. Stay tuned, a lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, this episode is brought to you by Nissan. You're the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further. Ever wonder what adventure could be like around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capability to take your adventure to the next level. 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. It has class-exclusive Google built-in. As you're always updating assistant to call them for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting to your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. And the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder is also included in Nissan's incredible lineup that has room for up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Rocco DiSangro. And Rocco, this free agent class, again, we talked about it in the first segment, just uber talented. Offensively, defensively, both sides of the ball, there is a lot of talent. Even special teams-wise, you want to talk about Devin Duvernay and kind of what he's done as a returner. He's also a free agent. So all three sides of the ball. We talked about Justinmata. We talked about Patrick Queen. We briefly mentioned Geno Stone. But there was one surprise earlier in the week, and that was Kevin Zeitler. There was a contract extension deadline so that void money would not go on the cap for teams in 2024. Now, the Ravens got a deal done with Nelson Aguilar the day before, so he's back with the team and his dead money was voided. But Kevin Zeitler had the highest remaining dead money cap hit at right around $4.4 million. And the Ravens did not come to an agreement with him, despite he was pretty vocal about how he'd like to continue things in Baltimore and finish things. But the Ravens and Zeitler are not able to agree. I think while that doesn't mean he's out and he's done, this wasn't like he was released or anything. It does decrease the likelihood that he is back with the Ravens. Zeitler has been a beacon of consistency. He earned that Pro Bowl replacement nod he got. Should have made it the first time, but he got him for the first time in his career as a replacement. So still congratulations to him. But to me, I think he can still provide high quality play. But maybe, Rocco, do you think this is a situation where the Ravens have age concerns, or is it injury concerns, or do you maybe just think they want to get younger if they decide to not bring him back?
I think it might be a matter of just the money right now, and that's why the two sides couldn't come to an agreement. I don't think that the Ravens want to move on from Kevin Zeitler, and I don't think Kevin Zeitler wants to move on from Baltimore right now. I mean, this is quote for quote what he said in the, I think it was the day or two following the AFC Championship game loss. He just said, "I'm ready to roll. Obviously, I want to be back as a Baltimore Raven. There's no doubt about that. I've loved my time here. I love the people here, love my teammates here, and I want to keep playing with them. Hopefully that business side of football, business side, like we talked about, can be figured out nice and quick. We can get that taken care of. But whatever happens, I am ready to roll." And the reality of the NFL, it is a business. So he's an offensive lineman. Offensive linemen make big bucks. You see these big, massive deals. And maybe Kevin Zeitler's looking for one of them, being a Pro Bowl replacement, being one of the really quietly one of the best players on the Ravens, especially on the offensive line. I mean, he's really done a good job anchoring it down. So I'm thinking maybe it's a matter of money. Hopefully it's nickels and dimes and not millions and millions. They're off, they're not too far off from reaching an agreement eventually. But I really do see Kevin Zeitler back as a Baltimore Raven. But if he's not, the Ravens did draft a few guys last year that could maybe potentially fill in at the guard position. A lot of people forget about an Andrew Voorhees type of guy as a guard, whether it's a Zeitler position or John Simpson, which side that's going to be for Voorhees. But they took him in the 6th or 7th round. This is a guy that was injured. And, I mean, he was a stash guy. Like, okay, we're going to draft him. We're going to hope that he pans out, recovers well, and he's good to go next season. So I'll be really interested to see what a guy like that can do in camp. Can he break camp? And can he make his mark on the Ravens if a guy like Kevin Zeitler or a guy like John Simpson doesn't come back?
I think another guy too is Ben Cleveland. They have a chest of guys over there, but Voorhees is somebody that, yeah, he was projected to be a 3rd or 4th round pick before his injury. And you're exactly right, where they saw that potential. They traded back into the draft to get him. They gave up a 6th round pick. I think it was to Cleveland to get a 7th. So it was a 6th round pick in this upcoming draft for a 7th round pick last year. And they took Voorhees with that pick. And you're getting essentially a late day 2, early day 3 prospect when healthy in the 7th round. So, I mean, that was a brilliant chess move by Eric DeCosta, 1,000%. Now, a controversial move by Eric DeCosta last offseason, Rocco, was Odell Beckham Jr. That was a guy that I think, in terms of bringing him in for Lamar Jackson, awesome. Lamar had said, bring me Odell, bring me DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah. And look, Eric DeCosta went out there. He got his quarterback, someone from his wish list. But it was the money that had a lot of people up in arms, because it was an $18 million deal with 15 of that guaranteed.
Yep.
And I don't think a lot of people expected him to get nearly close to that. But I think that at that point, it was kind of what had to happen. But he provided value in so many other ways. Did he have $15 million worth of production last year? No, I think everybody can say that. But from a veteran leadership perspective, from his impact on the organization, and look, I understand that, production matters. It does, especially when you're paying a guy that much money. But some places like Spotrac have him at around $12 million in terms of what he could earn on the open market this offseason. I personally think that it's going to be a little lower than that. Would you bring back Odell knowing that Nelson Aguilar is already signed and your receiver room right now looks like Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, and Tylan Wallace?
For the right price, I would, because of his leadership ability. People gravitated towards him. Young guys, even older guys, like guys on both sides of the ball, they wanted to be around Odell Beckham Jr. And he was a key piece in the Ravens locker room. And he really embraced Baltimore as his own. He's not from here. And he comes in, he hits the park height strut. He's engaging with the fans. And I know we're talking about the football side of things, but some of that right there, that's invaluable. You want that in a player that you bring in, especially a veteran with the profile that Odell Beckham Jr. has. He's a high-profile guy. People know him worldwide. I mean, he's OBJ, and it's not just because of the catch. It's because of who he is as a person as well. So it would be nice for the Ravens to bring him back, but for the right price, Kevin, that's what I'm saying. They don't need to go out and overspend. If Odell Beckham Jr. is not willing to budge a little bit and maybe not take a discount, then you're going to have to move on and maybe look to draft a receiver in the early rounds and try to bring someone that you truly feel like can help your team in. And I know that's like, all right, you look at the receiver room, Nelson Aguilar aside, it is young, and that's what you're looking at. But if you can't get Odell Beckham, maybe see what they do in free agency. Maybe they end up trading for someone. But I'm not sold on bringing him back if it's not the right price. But I would like to see Odell Beckham Jr. back here in Baltimore if I'm a fan. If he can contribute, maybe take a discount and help the team going forward like that.
Yeah, you can't bring him back at what the price was, or honestly close to what the price was last year. It would have to be a team-friendly deal, because I think there are other receivers out there that could also help the Ravens in a veteran role, and I think that you can probably get them for maybe if Odell's asking for that. And I'm not saying he is, but if that's the price for Odell, I think you can bring in somebody maybe even on a longer-term contract that is $12 million per season. You backload that deal a little bit, helps out a little bit with this 2024 cap. I think they're going to have to do that eventually. So we'll see what happens there. But speaking of offense, continuing with offense, I guess I've been talking about that for this entire segment. Running back, Rocco, is a big position. There's going to be some change in that room. You have a bunch of free agents with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins and Dalvin Cook and Keaton Mitchell tore his ACL, so he probably won't be back for at least the start of the 2024 season. Your only healthy running back right now is Justice Hill, but I think there is a possibility that they bring back maybe one of those three free agents. I think maybe even two of them. I think that's a little less likely. You have Gus Edwards, who's been a beacon of consistency for them over the course of his career, but his yards per carry average did drop by a full yard or 0.9 yards this season. So I think the production slowed down a little bit, despite he had more than double his career high in touchdowns. It was still good for him. J.K. Dobbins obviously had a phenomenal rookie season, but the story for him has been injuries. Suffered the torn Achilles in week 1, and just feel like maybe a fresh start is what's best for both him and the Ravens at this point. And then Dalvin Cook they bring in, and everybody was super excited about what his role in the playoffs could be, and he really just didn't get run outside of garbage time in the Houston game. So do you feel like any of those 3 guys will be back, or do you think the Ravens might just try to reset and bring in somebody else, and maybe whether it's free agency or the draft?
I don't think they're going to completely reset. I think one of those 3 guys, I think it's more likely we see Gus Edwards or even Dalvin Cook back. But I think Gus might be the way to go if they can, if someone's not throwing big money at him elsewhere, trying to bring him in either as a starter, as a, other running back role. Like you just don't know how a guy's career is going to pan out and where he's going to go. But running the ball, AFC Championship game aside, has been the Ravens' bread and butter over the years. And Gus Edwards has played a key role in that. 13 touchdowns, being able to do that speaks for itself. You talked about the yards per carry down. That's something you look at and you're like, okay, like what happened here? But he was able to find the end zone in key situations. Whoever the Ravens bring in, I'm just saying they got to use these guys in key situations. Stick with what got you there. Your bread and butter is running the ball. Continue to do that. And whoever you end up bringing back or end up going out and getting, you make sure they're getting the right amount of carries per game if you want to win football games.
Yep, that's right. Gotta lean into your identity. Still, we're moving on. But it's hard to because of how good they were in 2023. But coming up, we will talk about maybe who the Ravens could add. We'll talk about the running back position and a lot more. We got a lot to get to here on the show. Don't go anywhere. First, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and this next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes you don't need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week, and I've said it before. I think for the Ravens, Justinmata has to be a priority. They have to keep him in the building. They cannot let him walk out and leave Baltimore. It's something where he is too valuable from a pass rushing perspective. And everything that he's done for the Ravens, I mean, he broke out at the right time, and Baltimore now has to saddle up some money. And if they don't, he's going to go elsewhere and produce. So the Ravens have to keep him around. Therapy can be different for everybody. Most of us have bigger problems in our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, get BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, convenient, and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockdown to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockdown. We're back here on Locked On Ravens with Rocco DiSangro. I am Kevin Ostreicher. Thanks so much again for tuning in today and making us here your first listen each and every day on the show. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can follow along in audio form as well. It's the same show either way, so you're not missing out on any content. Rocco, we ended the second segment with running backs. Let's pick it up here in the first part of this third one, because I think, you're living under a rock if you haven't heard about Derrick Henry to the Baltimore rumors. I'm sure you have, and you've talked about it. But at this point, there was just so much smoke at the trade deadline, and it felt like it was inevitable and it was going to happen. And then I guess it fell apart at the last second. But now he's a free agent, and I don't think he's coming back to Tennessee. I think he has a goal here to win a Super Bowl. And this is actually a decently deep running back class free agent-wise this year. Derrick Henry and guys like Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, and the guys we've talked about for the Ravens. But you talk about Jacobs and Barkley, those guys are looking for their first NFL payday, right? It's the second contracts we were talking about. Derrick Henry, I think his priorities are a little different at this point, right? I think the championship is what's on his mind. Not that he's going to take a 1 year, $2 million deal or anything, but it could be a little less than what those other guys are looking at. But for the Ravens, the big question is, can they even afford to spend? I think Spotrac has it at like 2 years, $20 million, 13 guaranteed there. Can you afford to pay $10 million to a running back, and guaranteed wise it'd be 6.5, when you have all these guys to resign, when you have other needs, and when you could probably bring back Gus Edwards for $2 or $3 million, or a Dalvin Cook for 1.5 or something like that? Do you think Baltimore should go out and spend on a veteran running back, or do you think that maybe they should use a high to mid round pick on a guy in the draft?
I keep going back and forth on this, Kevin, because yeah, you're right. You could bring back Gus Edwards for cheaper than what Derrick Henry is going to be asking for. But then you look at just Derrick Henry and this massive human being that would, fans can already see him wearing like the all black unis, wearing the all purple unis. They're like the Photoshops are out there with Derrick Henry. And this guy is just a freak athlete, and he runs the ball with a purpose. And I don't know if you've probably seen the video before of him stiff arming the helmet off of the it's that drill that they use where they have the stick and the helmet attached and just destroying that thing. And he's destroyed some players with that stiff arm over the years. So seeing Derrick Henry on the Ravens in the backfield with Lamar Jackson, I mean, if that's not thunder and lightning, I don't know what is. That would be an unbelievable 1-2 punch, and I really think that would put the league on notice. But yeah, man, you're asking the right questions. It's, do you want to spend that money on a running back when you have all these positions on the defensive side of the ball and offensively that you still need to address? And I really, truly don't know if this is the answer. Would I hate the move? Absolutely not. Would fans hate the move? I'm not sure, but you see the reaction, and a lot of them, they seem to really like the thought of Derrick Henry here in Baltimore, a high-profile running back, bringing him here to the Ravens, and who's still got, some gas left in the tank. I think he's got plenty of gas left in the tank right now. So I don't know what's going to happen, Kevin. I really don't. But right now I'm thinking, okay, if they're going to do it, and Eric DeCosta will have a plan in place if they do bring Derrick Henry in. They decide to bring him here to Baltimore to address those other needs. I don't think Eric DeCosta is going to make that move if he cannot address the other positions that the Ravens need. I mean, the guy's been great with the moves he's made over the years.
Right. I think it's priorities, and running back right now for the Ravens in terms of where they need to spend, who they need to re-sign. It's not up there. I'm not saying it's not a priority at all, but there's a tier list of what these priorities are. And you look at, I can't remember what the graphic is exactly. I don't know if you've seen it, Rocco, but it's like the past 10 or 15 years of running backs who have been on Super Bowl champions. And it's all been guys. So I think their cap hits have been less than $5 million or something along those lines. I mean, the last two Super Bowls, it's been Isaiah Pacheco, who's been about like $700,000 each. Is a 7th round pick for the Chiefs. So in terms of paying running back, the position is just so devalued right now, which, I mean, helps, in terms of, teams can get a guy who's super talented for cheap. But I think we've kind of blown that out of proportion a little bit to say, well, running backs just aren't valuable once you hit like 30. And Derrick Henry is in that 30 range. So I think he has a lot in the tank too. Definitely has a lot of carries, over 2,000 carries in 8 seasons. But he stayed healthy relatively, considering, throughout it all. And I mean, he's had like 379 carries, I think, is his career high a couple years ago. Hopefully the Ravens will give him the ball more than 6 times in the
Yeah, but you talked about the cap and the running backs and Pacheco this year. The Raven, like, I hate to play the almost game and what if, but that could have been the Ravens with a backfield of Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Dalvin Cook. So it's possible to get there with those guys too if you run the ball.
It is. Still got to lean into the identity. Still can't believe something like that happened. But at this point, it's not only free agency that can get the job done. And I think especially with Lamar Jackson and the contract he has, it's just a different way the Ravens have to construct their roster. And part of that, and look, Eric DeCosta, all the credit in the world to him, did a great job of this last offseason, is hitting on your veteran minimum signings, or at least those who were close to it, and also hitting on your draft picks. And at least finding time for those guys to get in. Now, we know that Zay Flowers was able to be a great contributor on the field for him this past season. You also got contributions from Tavius Robinson, who I thought, was going to be more of a project player, but he stepped up and played some snaps for him this year. But I think at this point, you got to be able to get guys who can either, is going to develop in the next couple of seasons, or they can give you immediate production, because you're not going to be able to sign, 15 different free agents because of just how the team is structured contractually right now. So the Ravens have the 30th pick. It's not necessarily a pretty pick to have. You wish you had 32, but you have 30. It's still late in the draft. Now, there are plenty of trade down opportunities for the Ravens from that spot. You can pick up an extra second. You can pick up an extra third. You can even trade up if you wanted to, if there's a guy that you really, really like and is having a Kyle Hamilton-esque fall, I'll say. Still don't know how he fell to 14. You could stay put and take a guy there as well. The Ravens do have their second-round pick this year, so there are ways they could maneuver that as well. But for the Ravens, Rocco, do you think Baltimore should trade back and try to accumulate as much draft capital as possible, knowing that they're going to have to hit on these guys? And Eric DeCosta has said before, his philosophy is to get as many swings as you can up there. You're going to hit on some of them. I think this could be a good year to kind of employ that philosophy and trade back once or twice.
It depends on who is there and who they feel like they can get, Kevin. It's like, where did they get Lamar again?
That's right, yeah. 32.
Where did they get Tyler Linderbaum? 25. It's like they've done well with their, I know there's some misses in there, but you look at the late round picks and the drafts as of recent for Eric DeCosta, and he's done a really good job with what he's had. And I know he hated to lose that second round pick with Roquan Smith, but it worked out. It worked out. And he's a guy that wants to hold on to as many picks as possible. He's like, your friends in fantasy football that want to just accumulate all these players and picks and trades. If you could do that in some of your leagues, and like that is Eric DeCosta. He wants to get as much as he can, and like you said, as many swings as possible when it comes to the draft. But it really all depends on who's there. The combine is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting offseason with all of that, and who these mock drafts have going where, because that can be telling at times. They're not always at 100% accurate, but looking at the guys they need, looking at who they truly feel like, okay, like we can get this guy at 30, fine. You can wait a little bit. Kyle Hamilton, who I believe was the steal of the draft. I know they got him at 14, but for a guy to drop there and fall into the Ravens' lap, that was big. To get Linderbaum at 25 in the same draft, that was big. So it will be interesting to see what Eric DeCosta does, his philosophy with that, and if they do trade back. But I think the Ravens are going to stay put at 30. I think they're going to try to get someone who could really come in and help this team year one. And we're going to see that when Eric DeCosta, puts that card in and makes that pick.
And I think it's also another question in terms of if they do stay, what position that pick's going to be. Like, where are they going to go with it? Because I think there are a lot of different ways they could go, whether it's offensive lineman or cornerback or wide receiver. There are plenty of different people want to see plenty of different things, right? I think everybody has a different idea of what this draft should look like for them. So in your eyes, Rocco, where do you go if you're at DeCosta with that first pick?
I think you go corner this year. I think that was one of the positions last year that there were so many questions about. And there was a lot of, like Maryland's Deonte Banks, a Baltimore guy could have been a great fit here in Baltimore. There were other guys out there as well. Corner was one of the positions the Ravens need. And now you look at all the guys that are free agents this year, and it's like, like depending on what happens with all that, but still, I think the Ravens need a good young corner. And it would definitely benefit them to get one in the early rounds to come in here and to be able to just match up with guys, match up with top receivers on the offensive side of the ball and come in here and, show their physical, because the Ravens love those physical corners, the guys that can just give other wide receivers nightmares. So I truly believe, Kevin, that we could definitely see that the Ravens going corner in the first round. Now there's other positions, obviously, they could go. Do they go receiver? Do they go O-line? Do they go something else? But I really think it's going to be corner at the end of the day, but we'll see.
Yeah, and corner is huge too, because I've kind of said this, but if I'm the Ravens, I'm trying to sign Brandon Stevens to an extension like yesterday. Trying to get him to a team-friendly contract, because the Ravens have done it before with their own studs and their own guys. But after this year, Rocco, you don't really have, even this year, you don't really have a lot of stability in that corner room. Really only Marlon and Brandon Stevens are there for you this next year, because Ronald Darby's a free agent. Arthur Millett's a free agent. You still have guys like Jalen Armour-Davis and Pepe Williams, but they haven't really proved anything to this point. So you just need guys in there. And if you can get one of these stud corners on a 4-year rookie deal plus the 5th-year option, I think that'd be big for him. So a lot of questions for this Ravens team. Rocco, I appreciate you hopping on and answering them with me. tell people where they can find you in what you're working on, because I know in Baltimore, Ravens season might be over, but I know Orioles season is coming up in full swing.
First of all, we'll see how many of my takes with this, a bunch of these hypotheticals actually pan out and how many of them are absolutely the worst takes of all time. So I embrace that. If I'm wrong, if I'm, it was just the dumbest take in the world, tell me, let me know. On X or Twitter, whatever we call it now, I'm at Rocco DiSangro. Instagram at @DiSangro. I'm just active on there, really just posting as much content as I possibly can. And then we do the Ryan Ripken show together. It's a lot of fun. You can catch me on FOX45 Sports Unlimited. We are going down to spring training next week, February 27th to the 29th. So we're going to be trying to churn as much content as humanly possible down there in Sarasota. I'm excited for that. Hopefully some warm weather and it doesn't rain at all. But
yeah, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of the warm weather down there. All of the links to Rocco's work in the description below. Rocco, really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back here a little later in the day with our bonus episode. And then obviously we'll be back on Monday with regularly scheduled programming. So be sure to stay tuned, subscribe, follow along, audio form, video form. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.